I've created a flywheel in my DeFi portfolio that has allowed me to consistently compound my earnings while at the same time protecting myself from having further divergence losses. This way, I still have exposure to the market. When Ethereum or Bitcoin go up 10%, I see that 10% in my portfolio. Hey, when they go down 5 to 10%, I see that decline of 5 to 10% in my portfolio as well. But the point is, I'm able to mitigate divergence loss. I'm able to compound across various positions so I can take on high risk positions using house money. This is the flywheel effect that I'm talking about. Today, I'm going to be walking through that process, and I highly recommend that if you're watching today's video, you get a pen and paper. And the reason why is because it's going to be very, very beneficial that you also create your own flywheel for your portfolio, and it's going to help you mitigate divergence losses in your portfolio as well. Now, I want to quickly talk about what a flywheel actually is, and it's basically something that just keeps on repeating itself because one action leads to another action, which leads to another action, and however many other actions you want to have in here, but ultimately, you start somewhere, and by completing those other actions, you end up right back where you started. So when we're looking at a flywheel in the instance of DeFi, we're using deploy as our first action, or deploy capital basically, where we inject capital into a portfolio, and then of course, potentially we earn income, and then we compound that income, and then that allows us to deploy more capital basically, to the point where we'll earn more income basically. So the overall goal with the flywheel in decentralized finance is to have a portfolio that grows itself basically. That's what we want our portfolio to do. We don't want to have to worry about consistently injecting more capital. We want to be able to let our portfolio grow on its own, and that's exactly what I consider a DeFi flywheel. Now, this is one of the many concepts from our DeFi legacy program where we'll actually dive directly into your portfolio, help you build out a flywheel, help your portfolio grow on its own, and of course, you're gonna get personalized support from myself as well as my team members, and some of the results that we've got with these guys, absolutely astonishing. We have multiple people earning over $10,000 per month, some earning over $25,000 per month in our DeFi legacy program. With that being said, I want to dive a little bit deeper into this flywheel strategy. Again, the first action that we're going to take is just going to be deploy. So I want you to write down on your piece of paper, or even if you got a whiteboard like me pulled up, whether it's a real whiteboard or whether it's a digital whiteboard, your first action is going to be to deploy. And then from there, the next action is going to be pretty simple as well. This one is going to be to earn income, right? We deploy our capital and now we are earning income. And now that we are doing that, we have a lot more leeway with what we can actually do with that income, right? This flywheel can go many different ways basically. We could take this income and we can park it into liquidity pools, which is what is actually earning us income right now, which would create a flywheel. We can put that income into, let's just say, HODLs, and then we could also put that income into other LPs is what we'll call it. And what I mean by other LPs are LPs that aren't the same one that we earn the income from. So for example, if we deployed capital in something like Ethereum to Aether, or ATH token I should say, and then we earn the income in Ethereum and ATH token, and then we were to compound that back into the LP itself, well, we're compounding that back into the Ethereum ATH position. Or we could take that income and we could say, hey, we actually have enough exposure in Ethereum to ATH, perhaps we should park this in a different LP, or like a render LP or something along those lines basically. That's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about these other LPs. So again, decide where you're actually going to park that money. Where's that money going to go? Is it going to go into LPs, other LPs, HODLs? Hey, we can even take that money and we can park it into stable coins. We can also park that money into our bank account. Now, when I say bank account, I really just mean taking that money out of DeFi, right? So we need to decide where that money is actually going. In this example, there's a reason why I would do each of them. And we're actually going to start backwards and we're going to talk about the bank. Why would we possibly put money in our bank account? Well, number one, if we have bills to pay, and that's why we're doing this decentralized finance stuff. We want to be able to pay our bills with it. I'm actually personally paying a portion of my rent using my DeFi passive income. The other amount is being reinvested basically. But the reason why I'm actually taking some money out is because of course I'm planning on buying a house relatively soon. So I want to make sure I have savings so I can put down a pretty large sum in the down payment. But at the same exact time, it allows me to take some profits in the market right now without actually having to sell my assets. So by taking that income and putting it in the bank account, that's a way that you're taking profit in the bull market without actually selling the assets because perhaps you think the market's going to go up a little bit more. So decide how much is going to go over to the bank account. Is all of it going to go over to the bank account? What percentage? In this example, right now, I am putting about 40% of my income into the bank account basically. Now I was going to be putting 100%, but then I realized, well, hey, I am putting 40% back in, but then ultimately another 60% is going from my bank account back into DeFi positions every single month. So I'm like, at that point, well, let me just only cash out 40% and then compound the other amount of income basically. And then with that being said, what's happening to the rest of my income? Well, with that being said, another 40% is going to go right over here to these stables. And what am I doing with these stables? I am am ultimately going to invest them into HODLs. I'm going to invest them into other liquidity pools, and I'm going to invest them into the same liquidity pools whenever there are good dips in the market. The only reason why I would invest into stables right now is if I wasn't really happy with the market prices. I thought that the market was going to see a crash relatively soon. So ultimately that's what I would do. Next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, park some in HODLs. Now ultimately I am parking 20% in HODLs right now, which means that I have none going into the same LPs and none going into other LPs except for what's in stables, right? I'm waiting for good buy-ins as opposed to just going directly into other LPs and normal liquidity pools. So this is my strategy: 40% going to the bank, 40% going over here to stables, and then 20% going right into the HODL positions. Now obviously these HODL positions are not earning any income, so it's kind of sad at the end of the day. Well, what's happening over here? I'm actually taking the money from these HODL positions and I am leveraging it. So this is where the flywheel gets a little bit more complex. Basically, we are putting these HODLs over on platforms like Aave. So my HODLs going over here on Aave. Now keep in mind, not all of the HODLs can go over on Aave simply due to the fact that Aave doesn't support all these assets. And I do also have some margin fi. So let's just name this LNB, Linden and Borrowing Platforms. And ultimately 80% of my HODLs are going over here on Linden and Borrowing Platforms. That's because I hold a lot of blue chip assets basically. So 80% of my HODLs are going over here on Linden and Borrowing Platforms roughly. And then what am I doing over here? I'm taking out loans against the money that I have on the Linden and Borrowing Platforms. So we are borrowing stablecoins, borrow stables, and then ultimately what are we doing with those stables? We're either going to shift them right back into HODLs, which is ultimately going to go back into the Linden and Borrowing platform. So that's a little bit of a flywheel on itself right there. You take your HODLs, you put them on Linden and Borrowing platforms, and then you borrow stables, and then those purchase more HODLs, which ultimately go back on Linden and Borrowing platforms. To make this simple, what I'm going to do is just say that some of that's going right back over here. So let's say we're borrowing at a 30% loan to value ratio, because that's ultimately what I'm borrowing at. And I don't mean 30% overall, I mean 30% of the 80%. So if we put up, say, 10K on the Linden and Borrowing platforms, we are borrowing $3,000 against the 10K basically. So that makes a 30% loan to value ratio. And ultimately, 50% of that is going to go right back into the Linden and Borrowing platform because we're just buying up HODLs, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put that in parentheses, HODLs. So that way we know that we are actually purchasing more assets right there. And then the other thing that we could do is actually use these stable coins to deploy more capital into liquidity pools. So then we would go over here and we would actually invest into liquidity pools. So let's just say get LP assets. Now again, these could be LPs or other LPs basically. Point is they're in liquidity pools basically. And then ultimately, what does that allow us to do? That allows us to deploy more capital. And then it repeats the flywheel, guys. This right here is exactly what we teach you how to do in our DeFi Legacy program. We're going to dive into the flywheel with you, as well as we're going to be there to help you actually cross this bridge right here to earn income. We're going to be here to help you determine whether it goes into LPs, other LPs, HODLs, if any of these, right? What assets is it going into? What liquidity pools is it going to? What stable coins are we holding? When are we injecting those stable coins into different liquidity pools or other HODL assets, right? All of that we're going to be helping you with in our DeFi Legacy program. Guys, I hope you found some value from this lesson today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it right down below in the comments, as well as just let us know what type of content you want to see next. We're always trying to pump out the best content, and obviously that comes with you telling us what the best content is, what you guys like to see. And while you're at it, make sure to drop a like, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications if you did enjoy today's video. I hope to see you guys in the next one, and peace out.